Hey, welcome back to Series of Series, Halloween 2. If you have not seen the first Halloween, I recommend clicking above, and that is the link to that one. I am AJ, your host, and I'm joined here with Dylan Kennedy.
Thank you for having me.
And Luke Allison.
Glad to be here.
And guys, we just finished Halloween 2.
And I think it goes without saying, spoiler warnings ahead.
Yes, very much so.
If you haven't seen Halloween 2, you should probably, or Halloween 1 for that matter, you should probably stop this podcast right now. Go back and watch Halloween 1, listen to the podcast, watch Halloween 2, and you can join us for this podcast.
Exactly. So what do you guys think?
I liked Halloween 2 for the cheese factor, just for like the cheesiness, but the first Halloween is such a great film, such original feeling to it, just the atmosphere, attention to detail. I think the first movie is a really good slasher movie. This movie really felt like they just churned it out real quick.
Yeah, it was a fun movie. That's how I see it. You're right, though. The first one, I will say, though, the second movie had atmosphere to it. It was like, it started off, leaving off from like where the first one ended, and then it kind of just grew into this hospital, and then the whole movie's the settings is the hospital.
Before we get into our personal opinions on the movie, let's do a quick plot summary real quick of what this one's about and what happens in it. So, like what you said, first one ends with them shooting Michael Myers, and they have that badass moment, with that kind of confusing moment where Laurie Strobs looks up at Dr. Loomis and says, "What's the boogeyman?" And his response is, "As a matter of fact, that was."
Yeah.
Which is kind of awkward and clunky. Like, I didn't pick that up in the first movie that's what they said. I thought she said, "Was that the boogeyman?"
I thought so too.
And I thought that was a badass line for him to turn and say, "As a matter of fact, it was."
Yeah.
But I guess that in this one, I don't know if they changed it. I guess I have to go back and watch the first one.
Do you think that's intentional? I don't understand, why would they have her misunderstand him?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I think it's just maybe bad writing, but
I feel like they wouldn't keep that in there though.
This one takes
catch that,
so
right?
This one takes place immediately after that, right? Like, so we leave the house that they were in, and Michaels is still at large because he's upped and left, and Dr. Loomis is still a crazy psychiatrist who's still going around and pretty much just doing the same shtick he did in the first movie, which
being
is
a detective, basically.
hyping up. Well, see, he's not really much of a detective in this one, as much as he is just kind of like Dr. Loomis. He just goes around and
lumbering around.
He does his own thing or he does his little shtick where Mike Myers is evil. He's an evil man, and everyone. And okay, so Mike Myers is at large. I liked the opening a lot of this movie. I liked when we had all the POV shots of him walking around the alleys and peeping into people's houses and stuff. Like, all that stuff was really neat. He bleeds all over that poor lady's ham, which I think was the biggest crime of the film.
Yeah.
A waste of perfectly good ham.
That's what I liked about this movie is you actually got to see him in the first person mode, but you also saw him third person.
It's like they had a test group watch the first movie and they were like, "Now what would you want for a second one?" And they all went, "More Michael Myers." And they were in this one. They were like, "Well, fuck it. We're just gonna write him into where the whole movie's practically from his perspective."
There were a lot of moments where you saw Michael Myers not just as a killer, but as a person walking around a town and casing the joint, really canvassing the area. And there was a little bit of that in the first film, but a lot more in this one. But then, like you said, you take to a certain point in the film, it becomes a hospital movie.
Yeah.
So from the opening of Mike Myers going around and bleeding on people's ham, we go straight to the hospital, which is where Laurie Strobs is being taken. And Laurie in this film is the same character she was in the first one, except she's super fucking boring in this one. And she has very little dialogue, and she doesn't do anything, and she's just doped up on drugs the whole time. And she pretty much lays around in the hospital bed. And then she gets up a little bit. There's the weird, like in the middle of the film, she gets up and is just wandering around the hallways. I just assumed that was because they said she had a bad reaction to the medicine they were giving her. So Laurie's walking around the hospital, tripping her balls off. Mike Myers is walking around the town, picking off people here and there until he inevitably gets to the hospital. And then from there, at that point on, we're in the hospital. And no one will leave the hospital even to save their own lives. I didn't understand. One thing that was really throwing me off that I really didn't like about this movie is why people wouldn't leave the hospital. There's so many opportunities for them to leave the hospital, and they get about as far as the parking lot. Several scenes, they go, the furthest anyone gets out is the parking lot. It's like they get to the parking lot, and all of a sudden they go limp. Like they can't leave. That was just bugging me throughout the whole film.
For me, it almost feels like Jamie Lee Curtis and her character Laurie Straub knows that
Laurie Myers
knows that they're in a terrible, shitty movie in this one. It's almost as if she has this lackluster performance because you don't feel for any of these characters in this movie. Maybe Dr. Loomis a little bit because he's the harbinger. Yeah. No one will believe him. Everyone's like, oh, Myers isn't that evil. He will die. You kind of feel like he is a protagonist, but everybody else, it's like the people in that hospital have so little character develop.
Very little character.
Like sometimes some of the characters didn't speak till like right before they died.
Yeah.
Well, I felt like they didn't. In this movie, what I kept thinking was they didn't have to put a lot more into the characters in this one, which they should have. They should have put more into the characters to make us care for them again. I think since they were like, oh, well, since we're literally picking up off the first movie, people already know these characters. We know everything about them, so we can make them useless and do nothing throughout this one.
But it feels like a much different movie, and those hospital characters aren't like the babysitters in the first film.
No, they're I mean, yeah, whereas in the first one we were watching characters and we were in fear for the lives of these characters, and they were people and we cared whether they lived or died. In this one they sacrificed that just for bodies. These people were just bodies. They were murder meat for Michael Myers.
They were
That's like the
different
only
kills that Michael could have.
That was all they were there
what
for.
did you feel about this, AJ?
So the thing about it, Jamie Lee Curtis, you find out that that's his sister in this movie. That's Michael Myers' sister. And it's because she was adopted. Like her parents did not want her to know about it, so they hid the records, or the police hid the records. What was up with that?
She was born after Michael Myers was incarcerated, and the parents died, which I don't think they went into detail.
Yeah, they don't
on that.
explain
I think
it.
they just said, and then they died, and they gave them, then Laurie was put up for adoption and was adopted by the stroke, which one thing that kind of brought me into question was, so did Laurie's parents, have they just been raising like this infant? And they haven't told her that she was adopted? Because I take ethical issues with that.
I'm gonna guess she was like a baby.
I'm gonna guess that they were just gonna write it off like, well, would you want to find out that your brother was like a murderous psychopath?
Or she could have known she was adopted, but not known she was related to Michael Myers.
Yeah,
true. But if they're gonna shoehorn like this whole like, oh, Laurie isn't who she says she is kind of thing, that opens up the door to so many more possibilities. I feel like they just took a really bland route with it.
Also, it's very obvious that they didn't have that idea in the first film. Because in the first film, she's just a random babysitter.
Well, okay, going back into like the story and the plot points of this one, I forgot to mention that there is a moment in the first act of the movie where they think they have him, which I thought it is a neat idea that it is Halloween. And this is a masked like murderer that we're going about, and so it's bound that there's going to be some mistakes. And I guess it's not unlikely that someone would own the same mask that Michael Myers has. Although it is kind of weird though, because that mask was from never mind. I'm thinking of.
That was a William Shatner.
Right. I'm thinking of the Rob Zombie one.
But you're thinking of real life. In the movie, in the first one, he just buys that mask at a drugstore, so someone else could buy the same mask in that town very easily.
Yeah. In the first one, there's that bit of dialogue where they're like, "Oh, some kids broke into the store," and they're like, "How do you know it was kids?" And they're like, "Well, he took rope," which is one thing. Okay, he took rope, some knives, and a mask. That does not sound like kids. That sounds like a murderous psychopath.
Yeah.
I feel like today and age, people would say, well, we got a murderous psychopath on the loose. But I guess
back then it was
silly kids. Anyway.
So you're saying something about the kid that has the same mask.
So there's a moment where they see Mike Myers, or what they think is Mike Myers, and Dr. Loomis goes mad and he tries to shoot him. But then out of nowhere, a police cruiser comes and completely and totally mows this poor hopeless soul over. Rather, at this point in the film, we don't know if it's Michael Myers or not. Runs him over,
engulfs him in flames.
They hits a van and immediately it combusts.
Yeah.
The cop is all right and shows no immediate that, oh my God, I just killed someone in a horrific way. He just jumps out and says, he came out of nowhere.
What was your reaction to that moment, AJ?
I pretty much, oh man, it made my day. It made the whole film for me.
It was very cheesy.
I got up, I cheered.
It set I thought that was going to set the bar for what the rest of the film was going to be like. Unfortunately, it did not, in my opinion.
Yeah. It didn't for me.
Because I felt the movie peaked at that point. Like, I thought, like, that early in the film, you're going to throw some crazy shit in that, like, someone, like, you're going to have an explosion in the first act. Like, that's pretty baller. I got excited after that. I thought, okay, I think we're in for a fun ride. But then after that, it just went.
It did.
It fizzled out.
It did.
It fizzled out. It was like they ran out of ideas after that, which it's funny. We're kind of dogging on it right now. But John Carpenter, I watched a documentary about Halloween 2, about the making of Halloween 2. And in an interview in that documentary, John Carpenter said that he had no intentions of wanting to do a sequel. But I guess there was some political stuff going on with the studio, and they kind of had John Carpenter's by the balls in some sense, and they were kind of forcing him to write this script that he didn't want to write. So he said he would sit down every night and drink like a whole case of Budweiser while writing the script. And so he was drunk.
That's a Stephen King move right there.
It kind of shows because this movie kind of in parts feels like it was written by a drunk man.
I totally see it.
But not like in a fun way.
It's all making sense.
Like not in a funny and inventive way. Like I felt like maybe he was just so drunk he was like, and then Laurie's related to him somehow, I guess.
And Michael slashes everyone's tires.
Yeah. Everyone, and they won't leave the hospital just because like they're scared and stuff. Like,
or he just didn't want to ride a different location.
It felt lazy.
Like horror movies, slasher films. I like when they're set in just one place.
That's why
I do like. I was gonna say when we go into the good stuff about it, I was gonna say that's one thing I do like about it too.
That's why I love Halloween H2O. That's when I'm really excited for it because it's set in a boarding school. It has a really cool atmosphere to it. That's one of my favorite ones of the series.
Okay, so guy gets impaled into a car, explodes. They don't know if it's Michael Myers or not. Dr. Loomis isn't convinced that it is, even though I guess there really is no reason for them to believe or think that it is or it isn't. So Loomis is still on his whole shtick. He's still out there. The cops are still on their shtick where they're like, you're a crazy old man, whatever. Okay, we got a murderous killer. Another thing is they find the bodies of the babysitters. Like they start uncovering the bodies of the babysitters, and it doesn't hold that much of an emotional impact. Whereas like you would think that once the news gets out through the town that there's a murder on the loose, that the police would want to take like something like that a little more seriously. But everyone in this movie, like all the police in this movie, just kind of have like a business as usual kind of attitude towards everything. Maybe I'm being a little too nitpicky, but I don't know. I felt as if this movie had so much potential to do so much more. And at parts they utilized it. Like there were a lot of really great moments in this film that I felt was doing new inventive things, but then others where it was just kind of like really drawn out and kind of lazy. Like it leaned on cliches a lot, which I mean you can't blame it for. Like there's plenty of fun to be had in cliches.
I'm gonna take a more serious route with this. Are either of you familiar with the Halloween 2 murders?
The Halloween 2 murders.
What do you mean?
What do you mean? Like the
body count in
this one?
In real life, there is a court case because of Halloween 2. Do you want me to go into this?
I would love to hear that.
Okay.
In California, there was an elderly couple that had hired a handyman who was sort of a drifter kind of person that just came and went in different areas. I don't know too much about him, but he was this young man who, what I've read about him was that he was a drug addict or a heavy drug user, and they hired him to do some work at their home in California around the time of this movie. He ended up murdering both of them, and he was under the influence of PCP, marijuana, and alcohol, is what I've read online. I haven't researched it a lot, so I don't know how credible. Most of this is Wikipedia.
And he did it because he saw Halloween 2?
No, it came out. He did this. It was known that he had seen Halloween 2. The murder was similar to the beginning of the film where Michael Myers is stalking this older couple with the ham and the blood.
Okay.
And
that's what I thought.
People on the jury thought he was influenced by this film. Gotcha. So the first time in American history that a feature Hollywood film was used in a courtroom is Halloween 2, and they showed that to the jury, and it convinced the jury that this film influenced the murder. And this was the beginning of the whole thing that we grew up with Columbine and all that, where the media likes to blame violent video games, music, movies on violent acts. So I don't see any correlation, but it's an interesting.
Yeah,
that doesn't feel fair because it's a horror movie.
Yeah,
you know, like how are you gonna put the blame on? Okay, you
I know
said
it's a horror
was
movie, but it's more of like slasher genre, but it's more like just
this one's more of a.
It's just killing.
They just thought the murders seemed very similar to the movie.
It's more psychotic.
It was known that he had seen the movie.
I was gonna.
He was an unstable person.
How was it known? Did this guy go out and say himself, like, I killed these people because I saw Halloween 2, or was he just like a big fan?
Literally,
of Halloween 2?
It's on the Wikipedia page for Halloween 2 at the bottom of it. That's all I know of it.
It's okay. Well, that's interesting. That sucks because I mean, this is kind of a terrible movie to throw that kind of spotlight on.
Yeah, so, don't you kind of feel bad for that jury that they had to watch this movie?
What was your guys' favorite murder? Yeah.
There was a lot of good ones in this movie. If you want to go into the good stuff now,
one by one.
I think I'm done.
The hot tub for sure.
I think I'm done saying bad stuff.
The hot tub was it got me.
First off, what is that thing? Is it for bathing patients? Is it a hot tub? Is it a spa? Online they call it a spa death.
Why?
But what is the purpose of that place? It doesn't. I've never seen.
Why
anything
can
like that
it get up to 120 degrees?
Yeah. What's that function?
Yeah.
It's a giant. They make soup there on weekends.
So basically, it was what they probably audience thought it was going to be a sex scene, and the guy gets out to turn down the heat, which Michael Myers raised. He gets strangled to death. He
turned up the heat.
Then he turned it up even more. And they put that girl's head under that hot water, and her face melted off. It was just hard to watch.
I think my favorite kill was the nurse that he stuck the IV in and drained all her blood out.
Yeah, it was evil.
That was like the most sadistic one out of all of them. Like that's just some cold blooded shit.
It was.
Pardon the pun.
And the guy slipped in it.
Yeah, and then I guess I'm not done saying bad things because Jimmy is the most useless, wasteful bit of screen time in this whole movie. They shoehorn this love interest for Laurie, which doesn't go anywhere.
Make any sense. It doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere.
It's kind of creepy.
He's just the paramedic, and the paramedic looks down at her, and he has this moment where he's like, "I'm in love," and you don't connect with it. Like there's no chemistry. They barely even. There's a couple of scenes that they have together.
It's just creepy.
It is creepy.
It's very
he's
creepy.
Like watching her sleep, and he's like touching her, and it's just like there's no emotion. And
I think it's
I was more afraid of
creepy, though.
I was more afraid of Jimmy than I was Michael Myers in this movie, if I can be honest.
I feel you. And he doesn't die.
And he doesn't die.
As soon as I saw that character,
he's the one character you want to die so bad.
As soon as I saw him, I go, man, please
somehow
die.
Untouched. And then also the last time you see him, he's okay. So many poor decisions made by so many characters. Michael Myers is chasing Laurie. Laurie is running away from him. It's a cat and mouse chase. She gets out of the hospital, and then of course, rather than leaving the property, just jumps into some rando's car to wait there and hope that Michael Myers doesn't kill everybody and that someone can somehow contact the police rather than just doing it herself. Yeah. Turns out to be Jimmy's car. Jimmy gets in. He gives her like just the weirdest look I've ever seen. and then passes out, and then that's the last you see of him.
Yeah.
Just a waste of a character who could have been a kill. Could have been a kill if they wanted to. I felt a lot in this. They tried to turn the heat up a lot because there's the explosion.
Well, they did to those two.
Right. There's the explosion. There's a lot more kill. There's a lot bigger body count, a lot more gruesome kills, and then they throw this love interest in as if like we're supposed to give a shit.
Yeah.
They should have killed him off to make it, because this felt like a very sadistic film. Like this felt like more mean spirited than the first one.
I guess they kept him alive for like what was supposed to be 3. And so I guess that Laurie and him would have been more of like an actual love interest.
I'm sure there is something in there. They were like,
I enjoyed the score. I thought the intro with the
synthesizer
and the Mr. Sandman.
Yes, yeah.
Well, okay, here's the problem I have with the Mr. Sandman.
I loved it, and I think they bring that back in the end of the film.
Yeah,
and I love that cheerful, almost Christmassy song with the backdrop of a Halloween movie, and they pay homage to that in H2O.
You know, this movie, the more I think about it, the more I think it had so much potential. You know, it had a lot of potential.
Well, like you said,
I don't think it did.
Budweisers,
right? Well, I think John Carpenter and Debra Hill probably wrote a more elaborate script with a lot more things that tied in together, because there's a lot of loose ends at the end of this.
Hollywood interfered.
And I'm pretty sure the studio got involved, and they were like, we need a love interest.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, we didn't write a love interest. And they were like, what's your name? You're Jimmy. Come on, let's get in this film.
They probably
piece
said
of shit.
Michael Myers needs to be shown more. More murders. Which the hammer murder, what did you guys think about the hammer going into that guy's head?
Oh, that was a good one. The sound effect, the noise it makes. It sounded like a... I don't know what it sounded like a shoe, like a nail going through a shoe.
Do you know what I think of when I see these movies? What did people think of it when they went and saw it in theaters? Did they walk out and say, boy, that was a good Halloween movie?
I don't think it...
Or did they say, wow, like they really...
I
did not do well in this one.
I don't think it was received well.
But some of it, like in the 81, at this time, it wouldn't have that outdated feel. Like, I feel like The Hospital, I was complaining about The Hospital to AJ the whole film because it just seemed like such a horrible place. But maybe that was just because of
I like The Hospital, though.
I did too. I think it's an interesting place for the movie.
Good setting,
but it just didn't feel like a real hospital to me. Maybe it was just for some of the decorations. Maybe it's just the vibe of the 80s.
So you gotta think though, back then it was like that was really new. I mean, people just went for that kind of stuff. It wasn't like, is this a good movie? It's more of like they went for the fun of it.
Going to the good, something you brought up earlier, AJ. In the opening, you get them throughout the town a little bit, and I liked that, like, you know, the POV stuff and peeping into people's houses, like, that was great. I do like that the movie takes place in the hospital. I liked the hospital. I thought the hospital was cozy. I liked all the Halloween decorations anywhere. I liked how it was... it felt like a very vulnerable place.
It didn't feel real. I liked the hospital. It just did. There weren't other people at the hospital.
It was empty.
There were no patients besides those babies. It just didn't feel like a functioning.
There was the kid in the beginning with the bloody nose or whatever. I wonder what happened to him.
Yeah, what was up with the kid with the bloody face?
It was not a functioning hospital.
Yeah, that went nowhere.
And then, so the babies inside, did they get the babies
There's
out?
There's a lot of...
the end of the
there
movie.
was babies, and no one was watching the babies.
Yeah. You could almost say it's like The Room, because it has so many plot twists. Like, it goes...
I couldn't compare this to The Room, necessarily.
It goes in so many directions that it does not explain.
It
leaves a lot of strings.
It opens up a lot of doors. It introduces a lot of new ideas, and then either immediately flushes them down the toilet or doesn't follow up on them. That said, though,
it's almost as if the person writing it was drinking an alcoholic beverage.
He was drinking a lot of alcoholic beverages. Now, that said, though, John Carpenter is a great writer, though. Like, don't get me wrong. That's not to... This movie, I don't think, is to knock his writing in any sense. I think this is definitely a movie written by a man who didn't want to write the movie. But
was being paid an exorbitant
amount
to make the movie.
I don't know what the situation was of what sold him to do it. But anyway, I liked the hospital for some reason because it had a very eerie kind of the Halloween decorations and everything. I liked the kills were more inventive in this one.
They
and there
were
a lot
They
more
were.
of
I
them.
totally agree with that.
Yes.
I liked that Mike Myers is seen a lot more, and you get a lot more stuff from his perspective. I did not like Laurie Strode in this movie. Laurie Strode was just
A babe.
she was
She
useless.
didn't even talk.
She barely
didn't have,
talked.
like lines.
She was so useless.
She just crawled around
Which
helplessly.
I get it. She's in shock. She's
Yeah.
gone through a lot of shit. You know, I like. Also, it's weird to think about is Halloween 1. This is still like in the same night. So Laurie, her
Yeah.
best friends are all dead.
Yeah.
She's been attempted murder on several different kinds. So like on
Yeah.
one end, it's like
That's why she's in that fetal position. She's
They-
just like, I fucked this shit.
they overplay.
When's it gonna end?
They overplay
40 years later.
her like her stress and like her PTSD from it, which plays into the cliche of like the girl who just I can't get away. Oh, I'm just gonna fall onto the floor. And then there was also that dumb scene where she's in the parking lot and Loomis and the other nurse, which that was the nurse from the first movie, which I don't know why they brought her back because she was barely in the first one. There's the scene where Loomis is driving to the hospital in the first movie.
Oh.
Loomis is going to
His
the hospital.
assistant.
His assistant.
Yeah.
Like she comes back
I
for some
forgot
reason.
all about her.
And they kind of bring her back in a way that's supposed to be like, am I supposed to care?
Yeah.
Because she didn't really do much in the first movie. She's just kind of there to help drive the plot forward a little bit and be like a person to explain things to the audience a little bit. So then she's back, and like I'm like, okay, she's back. Whatever. Anyway, Laurie's in the parking lot because no one can leave the parking lot. And
Yeah.
The budget was too small.
right.
It's like there was a
but
barrier there.
It wasn't too small though. I could tell this one definitely was bigger than the first one, and it's like the first act of the movie is not in the hospital, and it's only the last two acts. Like, get out of the parking lot.
When
Leave
she
the
was
parking
crawling
lot.
on the parking lot
Yeah,
screaming,
and she's going.
it
"Help."
just reminded me of Christmas with the Cranks. I'm sorry.
She's so useless.
That scene.
She's laying on the ground. Help. And then the door closes and they're not there. And then all of a
she
sudden,
freaking.
help!
Yeah.
Like, then she can talk. It's like, okay, Lori,
Then
like,
she
what the hell?
screams.
A lot of inconsistency.
I think we can all agree that one of the worst scenes in this movie is when Dr. Loomis is having this conversation with one of the police officers in front of the Myers house, and they're basically explaining the plot of the movie
Mm-hmm.
and like catching up people
Yeah.
on the movie.
I didn't like the police in this movie at all. None of them. Except for the guy at the very end. We didn't
Yeah.
even get a name to him.
No.
I think he was the best cop. He was the one who showed the most character. He was the
Yeah.
one who was like
He was very sarcastic.
very sarcastic, very like, oh, god damn it, I'm stuck with this Dr.
It was
Loomis
like
guy.
Dr. Loomis was like, "Do you know this town?" He's like, "A little bit."
A little bit, yeah. I liked him, but then he dies. Literally, we get
Yeah.
every character that you like, that I like in this movie,
I know.
die.
And then the ones you hate don't die.
they survive.
And then,
So
so at the very end,
yeah,
there's,
let's get to the end now.
So this is like the very cinematic event where you hope Michael Myers
You get the
gets killed.
standoff again
Yeah.
with Loomis. Loomis
And
pumps him
so-
full of iron. Mike Myers gets back up from that, which is another thing they don't explain. Why can he not die? How can someone take 12 bullets
Yeah.
in a night and still keep on murdering? Like that
And
just,
boys, it's gonna get a lot worse than that with the
Oh,
series.
I
It just-
guarantee it. I know. First one we love. It was great. It was good. The second one, yeah, nosedive, complete nosedive for the series, which is why I think when we go into the third one, the third one is completely different because I think in the third one they said, okay, no one liked the second one. Let's just flush it all down the toilet and do something completely different.
I've never seen Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, so I'm very excited.
I am excited for that one.
It's my personal favorite next to the first one.
And that will be their next episode, so that's going to be good.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good change for a little bit.
But yeah, I think it'll be nice. It's gonna be nice. I'm really excited for the third one. It's gonna be nice just to see something different. Okay, so we're at the end of the movie.
Yep.
We get the showdown with Loomis and Laurie and everyone.
And they turn all the propane tanks
Okay,
on.
I was
the
getting
gas.
so frustrated where they're in the gas room. Which what is that? Is that just a gas room?
It's like oxygen for or Luke, what is that? Is it like is it basically like oxygen for patient or like the devices or something?
I believe it was a storage room for just oxygen tanks and different medical things. It was different. Yeah.
They turn them all up though, and like Michael Myers is just like he gets shot in the eyes.
He gets
like,
his eyes shot
Laurie's
out.
got some good
and
aim.
he's swinging around the room with like a scalpel. What was that thing he was murdering everyone with?
I think just like a scalpel.
It was like a scalpel.
Yeah.
Like an idiot
Yeah.
for like 3 whole minutes.
Well,
he just can't find anyone in this tiny room.
He's
There's
like going
3
for
people.
sound though. He can't see, so when they're running around turning these things on, he's listening.
It
for that
looked like he
gas.
wasn't even trying.
Yeah, I mean, they
though.
didn't do the best job.
I
on
just
it.
felt like whoever was
Yeah.
under that mask was just kind of like, what am I doing?
Yeah, you can only imagine.
And they were like, the director's like behind the camera, and he's like, okay, you think you hear him over there? You keep swinging. Okay, you get really close to him, and it looks like you're close enough that you would have hit him by now, but you just don't. You just keep swinging.
I read an article about some of the people who played Michael Myers in the early films, and they said that the masks were so awful that they felt like they were going to suffocate wearing those.
Oh,
they could
God.
not breathe. And it wasn't until the later, maybe the 4th or 5th film, that they actually had decent masks.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what happens is Dr. Loomis, he gets Laurie out of there. All the gas is on, and he lights the lighter, and the place explodes.
They go up in flames.
and then still Michael Myers comes
he comes
walking
crawling
out
of
on
that
fire.
because the man is a living demon, I guess. And
How
then
is he
and then Laurie-
immortal?
they don't explain
they
it. They
don't-
don't touch on it. I hope that maybe they do in the later later
Yeah, I really
new
hope they
one?
do.
because it's like a little like the first Halloween. What was so scary about it is how like real that all could have gotten. Like the hokiest thing I think in the first one was that he got up after being shot 6 times.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then they took that idea for the second movie and just turned it up to 11,
Yeah.
where they're like, let's shoot him 6 more times. Let's burn him.
Yeah.
Let's explode him. Let's
Yeah.
have him stabbed. Let's shoot his eyes out. Nothing's going to touch him. It's like, okay, it's okay for him to get up after being shot 6 times in the first movie. At the end is like a little bit of a plot twist. But in this one, it's like, you got to at least...
You gotta
Explain.
address the elephant in the
You
room.
gotta address why he's not dying. And it is like the characters' reactions in the films are genuine enough to where they're like, why the fuck won't this man die? Like, I was there
And
with
Dr.
them.
Loomis is the only one who knows he won't die. Everyone just
Yeah,
assumes he's dead.
Everyone's like, he's dead. Even the cop at the very end, where the cop's like, Loomis is like, stay away from him, stay away from him. And the cop's like, he's dead, he's not breathing. And then, of course, he isn't. He jumps up, cuts his throat. So yeah, the movie ends with Loomis and Michael Myers presumably dead. Laurie is shuttled into another ambulance and taken to another hospital where she is presumably falling in love with the EMT that shuttled her into that one, because why not? Why not keep those patterns rolling? Let's just have her the 4th one picks right back up with Laurie, and that EMT falls in love with her. Why not? Like, let's just let's keep these patterns going. Except let's not, because I would give this movie probably I'd give it a 3 out of 5.
2.5 out of 5.
Wow.
3.5. I really enjoyed it. I gotta be honest. I know it's corny in little places and stuff like that, but like it was just like very fun to watch. It was the atmosphere
it's
was
a
good.
very fun movie to watch with
the
friends.
setting was good.
Yes.
It just had like a lot of great kills, like the syringe in the eye.
The
was
kills
very
made
gruesome.
the kills made the
It
whole
had,
movie.
The
like-
hot tub.
The hot tub thing.
Honestly,
it had nudity. I mean,
if this movie was just if they
it
had
had everything I wanted.
If they released an edit of this film that was pretty much just like a supercut of all the kills, I
there
would give
wouldn't
this
be.
movie a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I feel like if they cut everything out, it would just be. Nothing.
feel like
mean,
if
most of that movie was just nothing but that stuff.
It was
Those gimmicks.
It was very boring until someone got killed in credit, and you're like, yeah, and then it gets boring. I would say like 20 minutes goes by, you're bored. Someone dies, you're like, yeah, and then another 20 minutes goes
Have
by, you're
you-
bored again.
You guys ever seen that stupid sequel they made of Rocky Horror Picture Show?
I didn't know there was.
I
a
didn't know
sequel.
that existed.
They made one, and it's in like a medical laboratory thing, but a game show. It's like a game show or these mad scientist thing. It's
Oh my god.
painful to watch, and it has many of the same characters from the first movie, and it made me think of that hospital setting.
I think this movie worked pretty decently as a sequel, not as like if it was to be its own movie. Like if this wasn't connected to the Halloween series, this movie would have been like a direct to VHS. You'd find it on like one of those big stupid DVD
Direct to
box.
Laserdisc.
or Betamax. It would be one of those, and then it would be one of those movies you find like. Have you guys seen those big box sets of like the horror movie?
Yeah,
like it comes with like 500 horror movies and they're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
$10.
man,
You would
I tell
find
you
this
what,
movie on one of those.
I disagree. I thought this was a great sequel for its time. I know what the audience wanted. They knew what the people wanted.
He's just saying if it was a standalone movie, it would be terrible.
Yeah, as
like
a
without
sequel,
the first one.
as a sequel, it's a
Oh.
it's not a bad sequel because it does new imaginative things. Even though for good reasons and for bad reasons, it does newer, better things.
No,
but
because if let's say the second one was the first one, there still wouldn't have been that very what started all the other slasher films.
it wouldn't have been
afterwards.
as iconic if this was the first one. If this was just Halloween, it wouldn't. I don't think this movie would have been as iconic. With everything I said, I would still recommend this movie. I would, because it is worth watching, even if you just want to laugh at it or just be like, wow, like it's a good lesson in like how to do a sequel, an even better lesson in how not to do a sequel.
It is. You just gotta go into an open mind with it.
So Halloween 2, that was Halloween 2. Join us next week for Halloween 3. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And so that way, we don't spoil the whole thing for you or anything.
And then you can come back and watch our podcast.
And then you can come back and see what we thought of it. And also, if you're feeling a little froggy, why don't you go ahead and you guys tell us what you thought of it in the comment section. Go ahead and smash that like button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and ring the bell so you can get notifications whenever we're posting.
And watch out for our other podcast, Random Talk of the Night, released every Tuesday. And then, of course, episode 3 of the series Halloween, released every Saturday.
I can't wait for episode 3.
We will see you next week.